Diana ran a hand through her hair and looked around the room, pressing her lips into a fine line.
So, about all of you participating in the war, you all obviously need to train.
Everyone nodded in agreement to Diana's statement. While we weren't battle ready, we still needed to at least know how to defend ourselves. Diana, however, looked to me.
You, most of all.
Huh? Me? I was suddenly confused. How come I was the odd one out that had to be ready the most? The last thing I remembered about me training was that Diana was against the idea altogether. Diana sighed and rubbed her temple.
Apparently, there are guidelines to breaking this curse. Not only do we have to kill the Demon Lord, but you have to be nearby when it happens for the curse to even break.
That makes no sense! Where did you learn this?
Shadow. He spent the night trying to find alternative ways to break your curse. Unfortunately, we didn't find anything of the sort, but we found the guidelines to breaking it.
Well, it still makes no sense.
Even while it doesn't, it's still better to be safe than sorry. I don't want to kill him and then still have you stuck here because of an error.
I could only sigh and take it in. So I had to be there when the Demon Lord fell. Great. Diana waved her hand dismissively through the air, breaking my potential thoughts.
Anyway, we can't have you dying on the way there, and we can't monitor you when we're in battle. You should at least know how to defend yourself. That's why we've come up with a solution.
Huh? What solution?
Simple. The other rebel leaders and Sero have agreed that if you'd like a trainer to enhance your abilities, you can train with one of them.
I stared, seeing Sero step forward with a nod.
Each of the leaders is proficient in a different area of magic and battle strategy, good enough for self-defense. I can't speak for the others, but I can assure you that with Sero's skill and training methods, you will be well prepared by the time the siege arrives.
Sero nodded and bowed to me slightly. While I was flattered at the idea, did I really need a trainer? I knew Taekwondo, and I at least knew how to defend myself, demon or not. Then again, we were in the demon world, where magic was the norm. Just train with Sero. Sero seemed skilled enough to train me. He was Diana's right hand after all, and he was the one who apparently stopped the Demon Lord from getting his hands on me. I at least had to give it a shot. Sero nodded and looked to Diana, who crossed her arms.
Very well. You've made a good choice, I assure you.
With that, Diana turned on her heel and left the room.
Finish eating. Afterwards, you should start training.
Everyone in the room nodded their affirmation as Diana and Sero left.
Well, it looks like we'll be busy for the next couple of days.
You're telling me.
This'll be fun.
Man, training's gonna suck.
I'm with you, Matthew.
It'll be worth it, though.
Yes.
Damien's right.
As we all finished eating, everyone left to either train or to do things on their own. I left to start my own work, determined to be prepared for whatever was to come. The Demon Lord wasn't going to win. I wouldn't let him. I chose to train with Sero. He seemed to be very skilled, so I trusted him to train me to the best of his ability. I didn't want to be silent. Don't have time for this. I chose to train with Sero. He seemed to be very skilled, so I trusted him to train me to the best of his ability. I didn't want to be a silent observer in this war. I would pull my own weight. Sero brought me to the Grand Hall, which he had apparently claimed as his personal training grounds, as Sergeant had to use the official grounds for the army. Personal training grounds?
When I train my lady, I bring her here. That way she is not seen by the army.
Why would her being seen by the army be an issue?
It's not a matter of it being an issue. We simply choose to train together alone.
I nodded. If Diana had her reasons, then that was enough for me. Sero nodded in return before holding his hand out to the side.
Now, do you have a preferred weapon of choice? Choose wisely. You need to focus and master one weapon if you wish to benefit from this training. I won't allow you to change your mind later.
I stared at Sero, unsure of why he would ask me that. However, I closed my eyes and thought to myself for a moment. There were a couple of weapons I could think of. I thought of a gun, but what if human guns were powerless here? After all, demons had magic on their side. If they were powerful enough, maybe even a speeding bullet could be blocked with ease. Well, the only thing I have to say to that, though, is James uses a gun. And it's a magic gun. Malik's used a magic gun. Why not make something like that? I sighed and thought of what melee weapon I could use. Yay, melee. Well, I don't have anything against melee, but honestly, a gun probably would have been cooler. Oh well. Sword. Cero closed his eyes and closed his outstretched hands into a soft fist. Black and purple mist slowly formed around his hands and wrapped around itself like a spiral in a crevice between his fingers and palms. The magic elongated and formed itself into a black handle with a white, almost lavender blade stretching upward from it. Cero walked over towards me and handed me the sword, letting me feel the light weight of it in my hands. It was almost feather-like, yet my hand knew that this was a weapon.
A very simple weapon. You should be able to learn quickly with it.
Well, I like swords more than guns, so I guess this is fine. All right. Cero nodded and stepped back, gripping his gold spear and going into a stance. I followed suit. Though, if it's a pistol, I'd actually prefer sniper rifles, but that's me.
Trust your instincts. I'll go slow so you can adjust yourself to the weapon. However, I won't remain slow for long.
I stared at Cero, now fully settling into what I had signed up for. I was learning how to defend myself and possibly how to kill someone else. I felt a nervous shiver run up my spine before taking a breath and trying to relax my muscles. Cero seemed to take my breath as my signal to prepare as he took a step back and readied himself with a stance.
Are you ready?
I nodded. I had asked to be trained. If I wasn't ready then, I wouldn't ever be. Cero crouched down, gripping his spear, before lunging for me, ready to skewer me on its blade. I crouched and swung my sword to push the blade away from my body. With a loud clash, the spear was pushed to the side. I was shocked at his strength, as I only managed to push his weapon away with my own, with adrenaline helping my own strength against him. I jumped forward and swung my sword against his spear to push the blade away from me. With a loud clash, the spear was pushed to the side, leaving him open. I had him. I felt powerful as I ready to attack him. Don't get cocky. I lunged in and prepared to pierce him with my own attack. However, Cero moved his spear to cross his body, blocking my attack and pushing me back. I growled at myself at not seeing the strength of his defense. Well, duh, you're a beginner. As I landed, though, I saw a small smirk on Cero's face. Was he proud of me, or was he mocking me? Either way, I used the momentum to lunge forward again, continuing our sparring match. We continued to train relentlessly through the day. Each break we had was small, but I understood why. I only had a week to learn how to fight after all. Time wasn't on our side when it came to me learning how to fight, or at least defend myself. As we finished a sparring lesson and slowed to take another break, I let out a sigh. I was exhausted, but I knew I had to keep going. If the Incubi were going to keep training, then I had to keep up as well. Cero let out a small sigh and stretched, wiping some sweat from the side of his brow before looking to me.
Let's take a break for now.
Yeah, good idea. I collapsed onto the floor on my rear and slouched over my crossed legs, thankful to no longer be on my feet. I thought Taekwondo was hard, but fighting with a weapon was proving itself to be even harder. I felt a little envious for people who were able to master weaponry.
I have to admit, I'm impressed. For the first time holding a weapon, you did pretty well. My lady had to train for months to try and use her weapon properly.
Well, what does Diana use? I was curious about her. I knew she had magic, but did she really need a weapon? Of course, if her energy ran out, then she would need some sort of protection. Cero stared wide-eyed at me for a second before smiling softly.
She uses a saber, a curved sword. While regular straight swords are good for piercing your opponent, curved blades are made for slashing and cutting your opponent down. They're a little difficult to maneuver without in-depth training.
Cero looked down at his hand, forming a saber with a black grip and a deep purple blade. It looked like a masterwork blade, despite it forming out of his magic. As Cero stared at it, his smile brightened a bit.
A saber is much more graceful in combat than a regular sword. Anyone can wield it, but it takes a true master of the blade to use a saber properly and make a fight look like an elegant dance.
I was in awe. I could see a soft shadow of adoration in his eyes as he spoke. Did he really adore his mistress that much? You seem to really care for Diana. Sero looked at me with a chuckle.
I don't just care for my lady.
That was obvious. The way he spoke about her spoke volumes of his affections for her. As Sero looked to me, a flash of realization washed over his eyes. What?
You're human, so you would understand.
Understand what?
Love.
I stared at him, knowing the meaning of the word, but not understanding what he meant by saying it. What about love?
Well...
For a moment, Sero looked back to the saber in his hand before shaking his head.
Never mind. It's nothing.
Don't lie to me! I know your secrets. You have many things to tell me, and I will learn them. One way or another. I wanted to ask more, but a pair of footsteps echoed through the room from the door, causing me to turn around and see who it was. Diana, lightly glistening with a thin layer of sweat drip and wiping her brow, stepped into the room with a smile. I could hear Sero's breath hitch softly as Diana walked in. She did a small hair toss, most likely to get some cool air behind her neck, before looking to her guard and my trainer.
How is training going?
Going fine, my lady. How are the airs?
They're strong, but not strong enough. At least, not yet. It will take more time to get them up to par with where they need to be for the war. They've been in the human world for too long, and they've lost their sense of real battle.
In haste, Diana looked to me and held up her hand towards me, as if to ask for forgiveness.
No offense to you, of course.
It's all right. I understood. The human world was vastly different from the demon world, so the boys had become humanized and softened. Still, I was sure that they would train hard and become better than the demon lord.
Anyway, I was just taking a break and wanted to check in. Had to make sure you didn't kill our guest, Sarah.
I would never!
Diana's laughter filled the room as Sero's face brightened to a hot pink tinge.
I'm merely joking. I trust you, Sarah. Besides, she can take care of herself.
Diana looked to me with a nod and a smile, as if she knew that I would be okay. At least in Sero's hands.
I'll leave you both be then. I'm sure that after we're finished training, your husband will want to replenish his energy. And it wouldn't do if you were still training here when he finishes.
I like how we started calling him husband now, even though we're not technically married yet. But, I don't know, it's kind of nice to think of Sam as my husband. With that, Diana turned and walked out of the room. Sero and I kept our eyes on her before I looked over to the suddenly love-struck guard. His eyes were glued to the door that Diana left from, almost unblinking. Sero? Finally, Sero snapped out of it and looked at me, blushing and wide-eyed.
Sorry. Where were we?
Training?
Training! Right. Let's go again.
Like, oh yes, I completely forgot about this. In a complete reversal, Sero's expression hardened to a serious stare at me. I nodded, knowing that the break we had was now over. Once more we trained and continued until dinner rolled around. As the soft echo of the dinner-time bells reverberated through the halls of the castle, Sero and I went our separate ways. Him to his lady, me to my bedroom.